Welcome back to Clubhouse Chronicles, the place where the Central Illinois music scene gets loud, proud, and unfiltered. I'm Twitt, your host with the most, ready to spin you the stories, the sounds, and the struggles of the bands that are making waves right here in your backyard. This show is powered by our friends over at Broken Record Music Club, your favorite independent record label, bringing you music for whatever you are going through. With that, let's buckle on up because this isn't just a podcast. It's your front row ticket to the heart of your indie music scene. It's tough for me to contain my excitement today because of all the interviews that I've done. They've been great. Don't get me wrong. All the guests that we've had on are fantastic people, and I've loved interviewing them. They've been a lot of fun. But when I initially started, this is the one that I have been waiting on. I've been very eager to interview these wonderful people on the pod to talk about their super cool publication that out circulating the streets right now. I have my stack right here next to me. I won't bring them out because there's a lot of them, but the whole stack is right there. But they have their fingers on the pulse of the indie music scene in Illinois and beyond. And I am, of course, talking about the amazing people over at Pass Down Magazine. Please welcome in CEO and founder John Prince and head writer Riley Garrett to the podcast. Welcome to the Clubhouse, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you guys for coming on. Like I said, highly anticipated by me, at least. I don't know about the fans, but for me, this is top tier. Does it feel a little weird being on the other side of the interview right now?
I'd say so, yeah. We don't do this very often.
I feel like it's only right to let you guys get the spotlight for a change instead of highlighting all these awesome bands we get to talk about and see in the scene. So I just want to dive right in. Is that okay with you both?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Awesome. So we were kind of talking a little before this whole thing started, and Pass Down recently just celebrated its first year anniversary as a publication, which is a huge accomplishment. So congrats again. Did you think that when you first started and set out to do Pass Down Magazine that it would come this far?
I can confidently say no. We had no anticipation that it would reach. Well, at that time when we started, we didn't think we were going to get past about 3 months or so, that it was going to pretty much fizzle out, or we weren't going to be able to sell any more magazines because we were losing focus on who was around us, because we started in Champaign. So the pool for artists started to dry up as we've interviewed most of them. So we got concerned, but then found our niche and expanding and going all over the Midwest.
Yeah, you've definitely grown over the past year. That's for sure. With a new idea, anything like you have to really flush it out and get into that. But I want to kind of dive into the first year. At the very start, John, it was your idea, correct, to initially create Pass Down. Was it you that solely had the idea first, or was it more of a group effort?
It was my idea to create the magazine at first, although the conception of how it came along was semi a group idea. So at the beginning, a year ago, a friend of mine, Will Moore, we were in a band called Garden Girl, and that was kind of fizzling out. So we wanted to do something else in the music scene, somewhere where we could develop music and record for ourselves. So out of that, we made a little DIY recording studio. And essentially, I don't know anything about recording, so I kind of lost footing there. But then I kind of recognized I liked writing and talking to bands and meeting them instead. So that's where the idea of Pass Down Magazine came out. And actually, at the beginning, we had the studio, which was Pass Down Studios or Pass Down Records, and Pass Down Magazine. Essentially, we ran them independently, him and I doing 2 different sections of the same name. And then the studio kind of fell out and we just continued doing the magazine.
So obviously, I mean, like you said, it was you and your partner.
Yeah.
And from this initial idea, how did you go about assembling all of the pieces? Because there's quite a few people that are behind this publication. I mean, obviously you can't do it all yourself. And if you did for a while, hats off to you, because I know that was a lot of work.
It's actually really interesting with the first 3 publications. It's very clear. If you really read into it and see who's doing the interviews and writing things, you can kind of see the transition happening. So at the start, it was pretty much just all me for the first and second issue, with a little bit of helps from my friends like Will Moore and another person, Callum Beckett, who was our original head writer. And they were both in the music scene, both in their own bands and both doing their own thing. So I kind of just asked for help where needed. But after issue 3 is pretty much where we hit, we all hit a big wall of how much stuff we were doing. So I was doing most of the interviews. I was doing all the graphic design and ordering and selling all the magazines at different house shows. So you can see it. Issue 4 is a clear change in graphic style. That's because we hired on Carly, who's our head graphic designer. And ever since, that has just been the vibe of Pass Down Magazine. She's done a great job of creating us a huge theme and like identity with graphic design. And along those times, we also hired on Riley, who had started as a writer and is now the head writer.
Yeah, something cool like just about it is that it was kind of like invisible string for the whole team, because we were all kind of around in the music scene and like kind of knew of each other. Like Carly and I were part of like another zine, and I knew Austin from like doing photography stuff at shows. So it was just kind of cool that like we were all kind of around, but it just took like kind of the spark to like bring everyone together on this project.
Shout out Austin Corley.
Yes.
He's been on this, and he actually was the one who said, yeah, you should probably reach out to this person to get in contact with them. So shout out to Austin. And basically you're out here just assembling all the Infinity Stones to make the gauntlet, right? Once you hit that 4th issue, you really hit your stride, and it's clear the change, like you just talked about, from the first issue and especially until now. And I'm sure that the process itself of putting the full issue together has kind of gone through its own development with new additions to the team, with people moving up and down in the organization. Tell us a little bit about the process of creating a new issue of Pass Down. Like, do you guys sit down all as a team? Is it more of an individual effort? Or do you just trust it's going to just appear?
Well, I can say for the first few issues, it was a massive scramble. It started with people I knew and played with at shows. And then when we hit issue 4, like we've been saying, then there was a little bit of transition. We kind of got our act together, I guess is the best way to put it, but it's still hectic. Making a magazine is no joke. It's a lot of like, we hired on a bunch of people and writers who had good ideas about organizational skills and how to produce the magazine cohesively with everyone being in different places. Because it's also important to note that Riley and most of our writers are in Chicago while I'm in Champaign. So it's rare for us to be in person together working on the magazine. And I don't think we've ever had a session where we're all together creating it. You know what I mean? Like we're not there talking about questions or who we're going to interview necessarily. It's all in like an updated doc that just keeps going and going. We actually have a file that shows all the musicians that we've ever covered, and it's just weird to see it get longer and longer and more complicated with the color coding that we have. But I think Riley can talk more about exactly how it goes, because I kind of stepped back a little bit from the interviewing process now.
Yeah, so like in the beginning, like John said, it was kind of like people he knew, local to Champaign, everything. Very quickly blew through a lot of the bands that are active in Champaign right now. So then it kind of just became like us reaching out and interviewing like bands that we're friends of, or you know, that sort of thing. I think part of this too is like we kind of wanted to build reputations as like tastemakers as well. Like we're kind of fortunate that all of us have like a somewhat similar music taste. So everything is kind of cohesive in that way. So we kind of just trust each other of like, all right, like who we reach out to for interviews and that sort of thing. Kind of like a relative band size, because again, we're focused on local up and coming bands. We've landed some cool interviews that have been bigger, but again, we still want to be focused on like the local and like what's happening that people might not know about. So yeah, these days it's kind of just everyone reaching out to the bands that they like and know and everything. And to that end as well, we've kind of gone through like a lot of the Chicago bands that I've known of and been a fan of. I've kind of talked to them already. So now I'm kind of discovering this new stuff as I'm going about it as well. And it's a lot of paying attention to bills, seeing like who's playing with each other, who has like a similar-ish sound, kind of finding bands through bands.
I'm sure there's plenty of rabbit holes you can go down doing that, checking all the bills and then going to that band and then all the bills that they're on, like endless.
For sure.
Time scrolling.
For sure. And it's really fun. Like one of my favorite parts is just like going to shows and then just chatting with the bands after. Luckily, like there's just so much of a scene in Chicago and in Champaign that's like super doable, but it's cool.
I'm kind of curious, Riley, as to, did you guys do a lot of the interviews in person and it's you taking notes, or do you send them like a blanket sheet and then they fill it out?
Really depends on the circumstance. So like Tayon Swift, one of the writers, he's in Champaign. He's been doing some of the interviews in person, like the upcoming issue. He has one with Aftercare that he did in person. I started off doing a lot of Zoom interviews, and then I would just record it, transcribe the whole thing, then edit it down, which is cool. It was more quality that way, I think, but it was a lot of work and like time with scheduling and everything. But something we ran into as well is like, as we kind of expanded and there were bands from other locations, we started doing it via email. So it's like a doc of questions and sending that off. And that's come up with not only bands that are in other cities, but also bands that are like currently touring. So for example, like Freako, they were on the road with Royal Otis when we did that interview. But in those cases, I really do try to make the questions flow from one to another, kind of like I'm like playing out the conversation in my head and kind of, seeing like, okay, what would naturally come up next? And I've gotten really positive feedback on that.
It definitely flow nice. And I could definitely relate to that as well, because let me just sit here and like read just random questions, not very interesting, but you all do a great job of keeping everyone engaged as you're reading through every interview. Like you're just kind of waiting for the next question. I even like find myself sometimes like I'll scan the next question before I'm even done with the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Riley, you started talking about how Pass Down was initially really in Central Illinois, and John, you talked about this as well. But as the year went on, you started to expand out to other parts of the Midwest, other parts of the country. And you mentioned that it was due to you guys were just running out of people to interview. What was it like to make that decision? Did you run into like internal conflict about it because it was so true to the Central Illinois scene?
I think initially the first time we did a band that wasn't located to Central Illinois or the Midwest in general, it was actually done by mistake. And then we kind of realized that why not? And then we started to essentially find more people from that area without even having done anything. So I think it was Muddle. There's a band named Muddle, and there's one in Illinois and then one in New York. Mm-hmm. I can't remember if that was the first instance of this happening, but essentially what happened was we did the New York one thinking it was the Illinois one. And then all of a sudden, after following them and everything, and then we were getting suggestions from bands from all over like New England. And same thing happened in California. And we started getting a bunch of suggestions of people from California. And it slowly, we started to see there's a big correlation between college towns and the music scenes. You can tell exactly which college towns or what big cities have like a good DIY underground scene. Like there are places like Nashville comes to mind that you would think has a really good underground scene, but it's not necessarily, I wouldn't consider it underground. It's mostly people going bar to bar, like big bars and things like that. So it's not necessarily the same, which is pretty interesting because what we're really looking for are like up and coming or have come up in DIY artists that we know of. So it was pretty interesting little transition there.
Yeah, I think too, like in my mind, the big switch was with the issue where Greeting Committee was on the cover. Because I was like, whoa, okay, bigger band, like very much a change, some different locations. I think initially some of us might have had like a different vision, but at the same time, like there's only so much that can be done within that vision of keeping it local to Champaign and everything. I think with like the one-offs in like California, New York and everything, it kind of, there was a moment of like, okay, let's define our area. And so we kind of like settled on Midwest, mostly Illinois. Again, we want to stay true to like the home of Pass Down. And right now we're pretty much like our audience stats are like very much Chicago majority, but we're starting to like learn more about like the Milwaukee scene, Milwaukee, Madison, Indianapolis, like that kind of area. So it's kind of out of necessity, but at the same time, it kind of came naturally when it did.
It keeps everything fresh, like you were mentioning. It's just like a little tidbit, like, hey, you should go explore the scene. It's like a little scavenger hunt for yourself.
For sure, and also like keeping it, it's not crazy far away. So if someone really found someone that they loved, they could make that drive,
All about supporting the artists. I want to take a slight step back. So as you put these beautiful issues together and you've built up your vision and inspiration for what you want the magazine to be. Did you have like any influences or inspirations that kind of shaped that for you? I was very curious as to the creative layout of the magazine is so unique. I was wondering if you had any influences that kind of helped you get to that point.
I would say truly, I don't know if I can personally say or comment on that just because of the graphic design of it being mostly Carly's vision. I'm sure there are influences from her perspective specifically, but as we've moved along, I think just an interesting thing to mention is that since we started in Champaign or currently based in Champaign, something that we found out pretty recently was that Champaign, as like a college town, has had a history going back decades of different music zines covering exactly what we covered. And their layouts are, while more in black and white because they were like little newspapers and stuff, had the same idea and the same exact vision that we were having of promoting small bands, using larger bands as promotion to, funnel up smaller bands and get exposure for everybody. So it was really interesting to see that what I had originally thought was an original concept was actually something many people have thought of and like had done before in the same town. There's a actual archive in our like a local town library that has all of them archived. So we've gone through there and looked at those for a little bit of inspiration and fun little things to do. But I wouldn't say there was ever a magazine in my mind, at least, that I wanted to imitate or get as close to as possible.
I guess like me personally, outside of Pass Down, I just in like art and creativity and whatever, I'm really inspired by the OG punk zines out of England, like Sniffing Glue and like the Riot Girl zines. And I would love to incorporate more of that like hands-on DIY kind of aesthetic when we eventually do some more like merch and like prints and like that kind of stuff. But I think, again, our visual identity is all thanks to Carly and like developing this. I think that this kind of crisp modern look, like it's definitely more on like the professional, like corporate looking side of like the zine world. But I think the cool thing about that is that even though that's the aesthetic, we're focusing on like the very local DIY stuff. And for a lot of these bands, it's kind of their first press experience. And so it's kind of cool to like be able to give them like this very like professional looking thing, because I think these artists, like no matter how small, deserve to have their work noticed and promoted. And if we can play any role in that and kind of like uplifting that and giving them that press experience, that's super cool.
That is really cool that you're doing this for these artists. I know in like one of the first issues, there's a picture of Jenny Scara, and I work with her in opening that, and like being able to tangibly have that is very cool. Like one day when I have kids, they go through these old magazines, they're going to be like, oh, who's this? I'm like, I got to work with her, and it's all because of you guys. So shout out to you for helping the DIY community like this.
That's awesome. I know. Sorry, one last thing. I know.
No, you're good.
I know early on, John said like in the beginning, it's like how cool it is to hand like the artist like this physical thing, like here you go, and you're in it kind of thing. And yeah, it like you said, it's definitely a time capsule. I think that's one of like the special things is like I think everyone, especially in like the Champaign Urbana like music scene community, kind of agrees that it's having a moment right now, and we all kind of know that even though we're in it still. So to be able to like do what we can to document it now just to later appreciate it retroactively, I think is pretty special.
I will also add to that, like in terms of like a little time capsule, I think one of the most intense moments, not intense, that's the wrong word, but like one of the best moments as like someone involved in the magazine and having created it is when Urbana Public Library's Archive Foundation or something asked us to admit all of the magazines from here on forward and past issues into the archive. So all those magazines I was talking about before that were in there were officially a part of it. So that's something like, I think once that happened, I was like, oh, okay, even if this blows up in some weird way, it's cool that like a historic dent in the town, at least, it's pretty awesome.
That's really sweet. Like when I first saw you guys were releasing like actual print magazines, it made me really think of Sub Pop, and I take a lot of inspiration from a lot of the stuff that Sub Pop did with the grunge scene in Seattle in the 90s. And they started before they were a label, they were just a zine, and they were out there finding all these random bands, and it right away it made me think like, oh, these guys are doing the same. So that's why I asked the question. I was like, I didn't know if they realized that they were like Sub Pop at all. As the head writer, Riley, you guys have gotten to interview a lot of different people over this past year, and you already brought up some of the bigger acts that you've gotten to interview, like Frico and Football Head and so many others. Are there any dream interviews that you hope to do in the future that you haven't gotten to yet, obviously?
Well, yeah, number one, we are so blessed to have worked with the people that we've worked with. We're just super grateful to them. We do have an upcoming one, which I've wanted since the beginning. Let's say it's the May cover, so stay tuned. I've wanted this one since the beginning, so I'm really excited. Yeah, but yeah, our cover's coming up. Things are lining up like out into summer, which is crazy. And yeah, some really exciting stuff is to come, but stay tuned for May specifically, because that's a big one.
Well, I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled. John, do you have any interviews that you hoped to do when you were still writing?
I would say I'm still writing some oddball pieces here and there of bands that I come across and I'm like, oh, we got to get them in the magazine and everything. But I think the number one, this is actually kind of a funny, not a funny story, but an interesting thing. One of my favorite bands of all time, it's a bigger band, Cage the Elephant. That would be like my number one interview, the one thing I would ever want to do. Meet them and actually talk to them. I got to meet them on tour for a little bit, but it wasn't like, an interview. But they actually, this is kind of just fangirling, kind of like they liked one of our posts and I screenshotted it and I'm going to get it framed because I'm like, that was maybe the coolest thing that's ever happened. That's like the crowning achievement. Like someone from their organization, if not them, had seen what we were doing. So that's cool.
That's definitely framing that. They care about what I'm doing. They shouldn't even know I exist. That's the best feeling. I want to talk to you about your state of the magazine at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Those are really funny. And that's part of it that like reminded me of Sub Pop too, was that they used to do like these little messages at the beginning. It was most of the time it was like, fuck selling out, just do your thing, stuff like that. And they're kind of similar. Was it your idea to start doing that, or was it someone else's?
No, that was Will Moore. So Will Moore and Callum, who were the two people who were running the magazine with me at the start, they're no longer a part of the magazine now because they're off doing their own music stuff. But Will came up with that idea of like a State of the Union address. And we were more or less doing that because we had been in a band here called Garden Girl, and essentially we kind of saw the scene was fading a little bit. We were like house shows, everyone had graduated, so a bunch of house shows that were like key parts of the scene were no longer being run. So we were like, we need whatever way we can without just telling people, we need to like complain about this and like let people know that we need to revamp all the stuff that's like that we cared about and liked about being here. So that's where that came from. I don't think we actually do that anymore though in the newer issues, just because Will Moore has left and it was his thing, so I didn't really want to continue unless he was back with us.
Those give me a good chuckle right at the start. So I wanted to ask about it. I forgot to ask it in the Sub Pop question. We're kind of wrapping up here. We're coming up on the last two questions. Normally the last two questions are the same for everyone who comes on, but I changed one of them for you. I'm saving the most controversial for the end.
Ooh.
But beyond just me, I think the people want to know. You guys have done this for a year. What's the next evolution of Pass Down Magazine look like? Do you have anything new that you guys are working on or that we can all look forward to in future issues, or maybe beyond just a print magazine?
Funny you should say that. In terms of the magazine, we are continuing to do the magazine monthly, and that's our goal. But me and Riley have actually had side talks of just when Riley first came onto the magazine project, we also had like a secondary shared vision for something in the future, and that's to open a venue at some point. I think that's both like kind of our dreams of what to do in the future. So hopefully, like something funny about the magazine that it's just like something I don't think everyone kind of understands is that we don't make money. Like none of us get paid. We more often than not, every month we lose money. Like we're paying out of pocket to make sure that the magazine continues. But hopefully one day we'll be able to slowly save up and use that to start a venue. Because the whole idea is to, support artists, local artists, people we know and like, and also get to meet them and watch them perform and everything like that, which would be what I consider our payment for doing all of this. But yeah, that's like the big vision, and Riley can talk more about that. But we're also talking about short-term cool thing, potentially writing a book and covering everything that we can.
That's an interesting approach. So like what would be in the book? Is it like a yearbook almost, or a like just detailing like how the scene has grown, or what?
That's a great question. We don't really know. We don't really know too much about what the book would be. It was honestly a couple days ago we had I kind of sent the idea to Riley and Carly, and we're like, oh, that's a cool idea. Like, oh yeah, we can start thinking about that. But I thought I'd just bring it up because it's kind of like, Loki just asking you in terms of like, do you think we should do that? Because it would cover pretty much everything. It would be like your normal interviews, but also like historical context and like reviewing the year. It's like a year in a review kind of thing.
See, I'm a sucker for physical media. So one thing about me is I'm going to buy it. I think Austin was talking about doing something similar with like his photos. And I think you have an audience already with the magazine, so I couldn't see why this wouldn't be a cool thing to have. And then even if you don't buy the magazine, then you can just get the yearbook, and then you're still caught up, or at least you get the highlights. If you want the real nitty gritty stuff, you get your magazines. So
exactly. I'm thinking that's good.
That's
good stuff.
That's all sweet. It's so cool.
Yeah. I'll do my little tidbits on like short-term, future, long-term. Yeah, short-term, we have some shows coming up next 3 months in Urbana. So we're kind of playing out the time that the team is still technically based there. We're trying to get things running smoothly on like the business end, hopefully like developing some merch and more kind of different stuff like that. We want to keep diversifying our content as well, like aside from the interviews, some of the other content that we kind of share more to our Instagram and everything. Yeah, and then come summer, kind of transitioning the base to Chicago. Hopefully we'll get some collabs going, because another whole side of this is like release shows and everything, which John had going in the beginning for the first 3 issues. And that's something we're bringing back for like the next 3 months. And yeah, we're hoping to be able to do shows through collaborations with pre-existing DIY spaces. So we've got that going on in Urbana, trying to get that going on in Chicago, so we can kind of build that reputation for like doing shows and stuff. And then eventually the hope is, as things progress on the business end, and with that we'll be able to do a DIY space, future licensed space. We'll see. But yeah, that's kind of the plan.
Following the old book club method, huh? So
I was just going to mention them. We very much look up to them. We, in fact, did look into taking over their old space.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
We tried our best.
Yeah, it was definitely a little too early for us, like money-wise and everything. But yeah, that's what we're trying to do for sure.
All of those things are really cool. A DIY venue for you guys would be so cool, and especially like seeing how neat the book club space is right now, like to see your spin on it. And I could already see like the interior, like having copies of the magazine covers like on the wall and stuff. Like that would be so tough. That would be really cool place to go see a show.
Thank you. That is so cool to hear, like especially from like someone like you've been keeping up with us, and so that is really cool to hear that like you see the vision for that. Yeah,
always see the vision. And when you said like we're not really making any money on this, like, it's so relatable for one, but the hard work that you guys put in is definitely seen in every issue. The growth is crazy from issue 1 to issue 10, which is the last one that I have. But it's really awesome.
We were actually just like musing about that, because I was like, I think people think we're like more established in like making money and stuff than we are, which like, hey, optics, that's great optics to have, but at the same time it's like situations that come up where like there's only so much we can do here.
Right,
we're like slightly shooting ourselves in the foot, because it's funny too, because we've gotten big enough to where I know Riley's had an experience with it too, but like I'm in school and I was like applying to jobs and stuff, and someone had mentioned that they knew the magazine, like they were mentioning it off topic and didn't realize I was involved. And it's just weird to know that people like know about it and are just talking about it without us in the room. You know what I'm saying? It's so strange,
Yeah.
but yeah.
I gotta
we're getting
share
too
these
big.
stories because like this is so crazy. Like I went to one band that I interviewed a few months ago, Runner and Bobby, shout out. I was at their show in Chicago like 2 weeks ago, and they like recognized me, but they couldn't place it, like where from. So anyway, of course I went up and like chatted to them, and they're like, "Oh, like, are you Riley from Pass Down?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "What do you mean Riley from Pass Down?" And I've been a fan of them for years. So like hearing that was just like so surreal, and like that stuff never gets old. So I'm still like, for me, it's crazy because like these bands are starting to perceive us as like music scene peers. But to me, I'm just like literally a fan of them. Like under all of this, we are just music fans. So like it never gets old having those experiences.
I'm sure it's a very surreal feeling for you as like you said, it's just a fan. Like you're just going to enjoy the music really at the end of the day. It's got to be a very unique feeling because I hear it too. Like being in Pass Down Magazine's like one of the biggest things that you could do right now. We want to be in it. So
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that as well.
Oh yeah, no problem.
It's great because like again, that's the stuff that keeps us going, is just like the passion for physical media, the passion for the bands and the music. So
I would even say like something just interesting about like the growth and people like knowing who we are in terms of like big moments in the magazine where we knew things were changing, like changing to get bigger. I remember the first time someone asked us to be in the magazine, and I was really confused. I was like, I don't know what, sure, you know, like, okay, yeah, like easy enough, we can do that. And then we got to a point where we couldn't fit everyone into 48 pages and had to start moving it back a month and like organizing everything out. And that's where everything kind of just expanded exponentially. So now, like Riley already mentioned it, but we're planned out for 3 months, which is insane. I've never
That's
planned anything out
wild.
that long. So it's pretty crazy. But
That's crazy.
those types of things are nuts. And it's crazy to hear from other people that they want to be in the magazine.
Are you both ready for probably the hardest question you'll have to answer tonight?
For sure.
So I always preface this by saying there's every band that's in this scene is immensely talented, and just because someone is chosen doesn't mean that other bands aren't as good. But I need to know, because everyone has a favorite, who is your current favorite artist or band in, let's just say, Illinois right now?
I've got one. And I don't mean to make it sound like I already knew, because it's like I had to think about it for a second when you were asking. But the Trenchies, I think, are pretty good. I really like them. I like Charity Work too. Pretty cool bands. I believe, low-key, I need to search it up on Instagram really quick, because I believe the Trenchies are the ones who have their own, like, there's a lot of E's, you know, like Trenchies, Munchkins or whatever, you know, like a bunch of different people. But I believe the Trenchies are the ones who have a crazy, like, TV show. I have to investigate. You go around. I'll investigate really quick. I might have to edit my answer here.
this is so hard. So you said Illinois.
Just keep it in Illinois.
All right, I'll split it up like Central and then Chicago, just because there's so
Okay.
much. Central, this is like very much biased, but like Manifest West, they're good friends of mine. And I literally, the first time I met them and spoke to them, I told them, like, you guys have the it factor. And I stand by that. I think what they're doing is super original. I think they have the stage presence and everything. Like, if they wanted to take it all the way, I believe in them. Those are my favorite shows to go to. Like, if I'm going to come down from Chicago now, it's going to be for a Manifest show. Oof, Chicago is so hard. Did you figure it out, John?
I did. I can show them the Instagram.
Saved.
Okay. So, and I don't know if you can see it. It's confirmed the Trenchies. But the cool thing about these people is, one, they have insanely good music. But two, like when you look at through their Instagram and like see who they are, it's like kind of that feeling of like, man, I just kind of want to be like friends with these people. They seem like that kind of cool, like, you know, that kind of deal. But they also have their own like self-produced, like quirky TV show It was like like psychedelic robot chicken and like weird, like really weird stuff, but it's all their music in there too. So like it coincides with the TV show, what they produce in music. I think it's maybe the coolest thing I've ever seen, like out of the Illinois scene right now, just because they're integrating more than one medium and just killing it on both fronts. And we interviewed them recently in issue 11, I think.
Yeah, I think they were on their name was on the cover.
But that would be my confident pick right there. And they're in Chicago too.
Charity work is really good too.
Charity work is fantastic. I really like
they're
charity
coming
work.
up. They're coming up right now. Shout out to charity work. I did an Instagram live, the only Instagram live I've ever done. And I was like, maybe some people will show up. They fucking stayed in there and I played Crawl and I was like, yeah, I'm a big fan of these guys now. And they were just so nice. So shout out to charity work again. Riley, it's time to come back to you though.
So, okay, I'll say one, but then like, do you just want to like ramble a little bit about bands and stuff? Because I have like a whole list in my head. Okay, the one, like I have different reasons for all of the ones that came to mind. All right, let's say this. I'm gonna go with Football Head. Fun fact, they were the first ever interview that I did. And that literally just happened from like me approaching them after a show. And Brian, the singer, nicest guy ever, like gave me a chance. And like I was so nervous. I was on Zoom. Like it was just like all new to me. And that was awesome. And I think with like their recent EP release that was in the fall, they're like really starting to like hit numbers and everything, and they're about to go on tour next month, and I'm just really excited for them because it seems like they're hitting that like transitional period and like getting known outside of Chicago. Yeah, and they're so down to earth and like the nicest, and they played our show at Canopy in August, which like again, like thank you so much to them because they did not have to do that. Yeah, so I've definitely had my eyes on them, and I've loved everything they've released. So
see, it wasn't that hard. You were all worried.
Wow, but it's so hard to choose because again, I have so many favorites. Like, well, I mean, do you want to just ramble about bands?
Yeah, we can do whatever we want.
I don't mean to be like looking down at my phone, but I'm like going through all the people we've interviewed to remember. I will say the one, it's not just them, but the one band that like I immediately knew because I have one of their songs saved to my like personal playlist is Large Print. They're not like a huge band, but one of their songs, I can't even remember the name, is so damn good. It's like very chill vibe song. And it's just like, sometimes you hear a song from a band like that and you just are kind of shocked that it hasn't like, entered mainstream yet. It's one of those, like, I know eventually it'll be a big song and I can confidently say I was there first, that kind of feeling.
He's basically a hipster.
Yeah.
Such a large
Okay, my little ramble now.
let's do it.
So there's this band called The Back Alley. They are insanely underrated.
Completely agree. Great band. I will also say the very first issue, The Quartz, if you ever have the opportunity to interview them, it'll be an interesting interview because they are a cool group of guys. Their music was also one of those situations where we heard them play. At the start of the magazine, we weren't really doing in-depth stuff necessarily. We weren't like diving into their whole discography and like figuring all their stuff out. Mm-hmm. But when they played, it was one of those moments where I heard them or found them, interviewed them, heard them, then checked them out because I was like, oh, this is a lot bigger than I thought. Their music's insane. Like really still on my playlist over a year ago. Still listen to it all the time. Very, very cool band.
Riley, we have waited in anticipation for this list. Here we go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so The Back Alley, so underrated. They have some overlapping members with Axe and the Hatchetmen, which is a big band in Chicago who we hope to have on the cover at some point. But really incredible. Like anyone who is a fan of Axe and the Hatchetmen would also be a fan of The Back Alley. So it's really shocking to me that they don't have like bigger numbers. Not that it's about numbers, but like they deserve more numbers. They're just really fun. I'm also excited about Animal Panic, who is on the cover of issue 10. They're signed to like a really small label in Chicago, and that's kind of helped them. And they've got some new stuff coming. And I just think they're really great and original. So I'm excited about them. I think in terms of like genres that we each bring like our own influence into the zine. I think I've kind of brought more of like some like post-punk, like shoegazy kind of bands, and it's like that whole like that's a whole niche to the Chicago scene that is like really having a moment right now. So actually in the upcoming issue that's coming out on Saturday, the March issue, there's like 3 bands in there that are like out of that scene that are really cool. Some names like Flower Babe, Future Nobodies,
I love Flower
Heels.
Babe.
Yeah. Heels is great. There's another one, but yeah, they are all like really, really good. And it's so cool because like that's its own little community within Chicago.
I think I saw Flower Babe on they're on one of the covers. And I was like, I always like to look up the artists as I'm reading. And I looked him up and I'm like, yep, this is good stuff right here. So I had to stop and listen to his discography.
That is just I love that you're sharing this, like how you consume the zine. Because like that's literally everything like we could ever hope for someone to like go through and like actually listen to the artists and like discover new artists through us. Like that's kind of the dream. So this is so cool too.
The dream's a reality. You guys are doing it. So
Yeah.
let me just say something for the people that do purchase the magazine. Like that's literally how you're meant to consume it. Read the interview, listen to their music first before you read the interview, because you get a taste. Then you read the interview, and then you'll start to like the band more because every band's a fucking people. Everyone's the same. Like we're all humans. Like you just read the interview. They're just like you. Once you relate to them, then go listen again and you'll love them even more.
That's so I love that description because that's exactly what we're going for. That, you know, when you read, for example, like Rolling Stone and like Taylor Swift's on the cover, you have no idea who she actually is, technically. You know, you're reading about like a PR trained person or someone who's like written the article about her without even talking to her. And her music's great, but you may not have that personal connection or ever be able to meet her. All these bands that we've interviewed, if you go to a show, odds are, depending on their size or what venue or whatever, you could actually meet them and just say, hey, how's it going? And already know a little bit about their music history and what they've done. And that's maybe the coolest part. Even like when I read some of the issues and then read like Riley's interviews, it's just like, oh, I can just go see them and like mention and like, oh, like these are people you can easily go and meet and just kind of expand your life in the music scene, which is pretty cool. And I'm so glad someone else realizes that's what we're doing.
Yeah, on that point as well, that reminds me of one of the discussions I had in an interview with the band Light Blue Lines. They're out of Chicago, and the singer Hamad. We were talking about kind of making that transition from DIY to like small venues. So like they were playing book club a lot, and then they started playing Shubas. And so we were kind of talking about like making that transition. And he was saying like one thing that they as a band always want to maintain is just like that personability. He was like, I don't want people to think like I'm just a dude on a stage. I don't want there to be this weird like artist audience separation. I don't want to play into that facade at all. Like I want people to come up and talk to me and like ask me about my music. And like truly the difference between a music fan and a musician is not much. It's just like we're all lovers of music in our own ways. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of break down these like illusions and everything.
For sure. I'll say one story. Like I went to a gig with Jenny, and she was playing in Chicago, and she had gotten like, I think she went on really late. She went on like 11:30, and she was like really, you know, when you get put on at 11, you know, you're still happy to play, but people typically leave, and it's no fun playing to an empty room. So regardless, so Jenny goes on and does her set. And then afterwards, there was these 2 girls that stayed the entire time, and they walked up to Jenny and they were like, hey, me and my roommate both really love you, and so we stayed to hear you play. And that made Jenny's whole night worth it. It made her whole week. So if you're a fan of any of these bands, go to their show and say hi. Like like I said, they're people too. They love that shit.
And I think too, it's especially important these days with social media and everything, how easy it is to develop like a parasocial relationship. I think right now, like in person and in community, like being present is really important. And so I think just like kind of like pressing like, hey, actually go to shows, actually like go to the merch table, buy merch, talk to them, everything is like really important too. Because as well, like with COVID and everything, you know, people talk about like the loss of the third place and like these places to just like hang out and everything. So like eventually down the line, like if we do a space, like we want it to be like a third place for people and like kind of just facilitate that kind of like comfortability and like community.
That's the vision, right? Bring people together through music, because everyone can relate to music. That's the beauty of it. Well, like I said, that was my last question for you guys, but huge thank you to you both for coming on here and talking and just letting me ask all of my fanboy questions and bringing more awareness to the magazine. I think it's an important deal. Like I said, I think you guys do an awesome job. You guys do great work. And to be able to talk to you about your craft is it's really nice. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. And all the kind words. Thank you. It's great to hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like that literally made my like week. That's keeping me going. Like seriously, thank you so much. And we love talking about this stuff. So literally like anytime.
Oh, for sure. I'll take you up on that offer. So make sure you all stay up with what's going on with our friends at Pass Down Magazine by giving them a follow on Instagram. It's so quick and their handle's super easy. It's at Pass Down Magazine. Very simple. Go hit the follow button. You'll like what you see. There's cool articles. There's really cool pictures on their page. They share pieces of their interviews with bands, and it's a really cool profile. Also, you can pick up your own copies of these magazines. Here, let me look at this. You can pick this up. You can buy this and you can flip through it. Look at, there's pictures and stuff in there. You can go on their website and buy each issue. They're all available for sale. That link is going to be in the show notes. So, but be sure to go there and buy some magazines because they're so sweet to have. Also, if you go on their Instagram, it's in their link tree. So just, you can kill two birds with one stone there. Speaking of issues of their magazine, so newest issue of Pass Down Magazine is coming out Saturday. Be sure to go online and purchase it. It's going to be worth it. All these covers are fantastic. They have great people working for them. You just heard all about it. Why not support? Pass Down Magazine is also throwing a show at Canopy Club on March 26th. Lineup to be determined, but just wanted to get that on your radar so you could help support our new friends at Pass Down Magazine. And just like that, that's our show. You've been hanging out with Clubhouse Chronicles, where the sounds are hot, the stories are hotter, and the vibes absolutely off the charts. Don't forget, hit up at Broken Record Music Club on socials for all updates, news, and more on this podcast, on our label, on our super awesome artists that are super talented. We love them. You will too, I promise. So go check them out. If you're watching on YouTube, huge thank you. But please make sure you subscribe before you leave. It's just a quick little button push, the big red one, like right down there. Keep up with all the cool video content that we're going to be rolling out throughout the year. We have some cool stuff coming, some new music videos, some visualizers I can't really speak on yet, but they're coming. So you should subscribe. But until next time, keep it loud, keep it proud, and remember, Central Illinois is where the music magic happens. Peace.